It started off so well. Our first game as PSL owners, well, regular season game, started off so well. A Duvernay touchdown on the first kickoff of the game. It just started so well, guys.
Yep, that's why the game's 60 minutes long.
No, stop the count. I'll give you even 48 minutes? 48 minutes was fine. The last 12 minutes killed me. And the Ravens.
That was crazy. I mean, I looked it up. We saw history. We saw Ravens history that is tied for a game in 1997 against the Pittsburgh Steelers for the biggest blown lead by the Ravens in franchise history. 21 points. Incredible. And what's as crazy about it is we're going to look back on this game. There was even several opportunities for the Ravens to avert the disaster, and just some bad luck in those situations caused them to not be able to escape with the win, which even if they escaped with the win, I still think we would be having this same conversation because there were some miscues in the second half, some interesting decisions that just can't happen. But, the best thing we can say about this game from an overall perspective, in my opinion, is that it's week 2. Still plenty of football left to play. And there were some good things. There were some good things that were really promising. And I don't think even the fact that, they came in one of the worst losses in franchise history means that we can't look at those and say and brush them off and say, okay, there's no hope here at all. No, there's plenty of hope. There's plenty of good things that happen. There's things that need to be cleaned up. And we'll talk about all of it because there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one positive kind of thing that I can take away is that Lamar and the passing offense in particular, I thought looked pretty incredible. And it's, an offense that, while, Mark Andrews was a focal point, I think a lot of that was volume. He wasn't necessarily relied on for the big play in every situation. You look at the stats, I think Lamar had 3 passing touchdowns this game. 1 to Andrews, 1 to Bateman, 1 to Robinson. So the ball was spread around a good bit. And I think Bateman and Andrews both ended up with over 100 yards. And I think Duvernay is around 50 or something. So, passing the ball well and very efficient. I think it was 21 for 29. So just overall had a really fantastic game. And putting up 38 points most games, I think, is pretty dang good. There were plenty of games in 2019. The Ravens are absolutely steamrolling people with putting up 38 points. So I think, the offense in at least that phase, we'll talk about it, but there are other phases where the offense was not so good and maybe bad. But at the end of the day, 38 points, that's a lot of points. That should be enough to win a ball game.
Definitely. Rashad Bateman was targeted 7 times, 4 catches, 108 yards, and a touchdown. Mark Andrews, 11 times for 9 catches, 104 yards, and a touchdown. Duvernay, 2 for 42. Robinson, 1 for 12. And then Tylan Wallace, 1 for 9. Which is definitely, I thought likely had a couple catches, so I don't know why that's not showing up. Maybe this is only
4 for 43.
Yeah.
On 5
weird.
targets.
I'm not seeing
not showing up on what you're looking at.
Yeah, I guess it's only showing the top people or something, which is weird because it had Tylan Wallace. But anyways, it great game by the number 1A and 1B on the offense. I think Lamar, it's pretty lights out, all things considered. He played excellently. The MVP chant happened, right? That's the level of game that was happening at one point. We were chanting MVP and feeling happy. Remember that? Feels like a while ago. but yeah, it's just it is frustrating. But I think you said, Peter, there was a lot of good things that we can reflect on, and I think we should.
Yeah, and I think we'll start out with that because what's crazy about this game is this is kind of the opposite game of what I was expecting. I was expecting a defensive struggle. I didn't necessarily think that this was a lock win for the Ravens. The Dolphins have a pretty talented roster as well. Their coach, his scheme is intriguing, and we'll get to that because I definitely have some opinions about what the Dolphins coaching was able to do against the Ravens later in this game. But in the first half, I think that the Ravens did exactly what they needed to do. The resume that Tua brought into this game was that if you got up big on him, he was going to struggle to be able to get the offense into position. That didn't happen for some reasons we'll talk about in the second half. But, the offense came out, and it was a precision passing attack. The Ravens even tried to get the run game going a little bit. Kenyon Drake it seemed like he had more success than he did. I'm looking at these stats, 6 carries for 8 yards. I'm guessing he must have had one run that looked good, and that was it. But, the passing game was on point. As Alec pointed out while we were watching it, the Dolphins decided in the first half they were going to dare the Ravens to pass to Bateman. The Ravens said, okay, fine, we'll do that. And they took advantage of that early. Andrews had plenty of room there. Just an efficient offense, and they were aggressive. And I think you look at that offense, and that offense is still there, even though they lost. And there are definitely aspects in the passing game there that looked like a next step from a year ago that, the Ravens will be able to go toe-to-toe with top offenses in the league. When you got the Bills coming in a few weeks from now, and you got the Bengals supposedly a top offense. They're off to a rough start this year, though. Yeah, that's the biggest takeaway from this game from a positive perspective is that Lamar Jackson, he's back from his injury, even though it wasn't a terribly significant one. Still, you love to see that. And the first half is everything we want out of a Ravens passing attack.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The other thing that I kind of take away, too, is that, the big narrative going into last season after that just mess of a game in Miami, everybody was like, Lamar can't beat cover zero. Cover zero, that's like the way to beat Lamar. All the defenses, let's everybody get in cover zero. Like, that's the way you beat the Ravens kind of thing. And, that was not the reason for the loss today. Like, there were plenty of cover zero looks, and the Ravens had answers for almost every single one of them. I don't want to say surprisingly because I don't want to make myself seem smarter than I really am, but I was going to say that my bold prediction last time was really that the Ravens were going to take advantage of the outside run. Now, part of that, in my defense, was that I thought Dobbins was going to play. He was inactive, so that was not the case. I will say that the Ravens did not really rely on outside run play at all in this game. But that being said, plenty of other ways to take advantage of cover zero. You mentioned it, Peter, throwing to Bateman. There was that slant, I think, that he got behind Xavier Howard. Xavier Howard was doing a lot of running today, by the way. On Bateman, he was running on the other play I'm going to mention, that run that Lamar had up the middle. I think it was maybe off the guard, right guard or something. Xavier Howard was also chasing him on that play. There are a few plays like that where the Dolphins tried cover zero and the Ravens made them pay. So I don't want to hear anything more about how cover zero can defeat Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. That's just not true. Like, they have the ability to be able to beat that pretty easily. Again, like, for the most part, I thought the offense played really well. I think the big glaring hole in this team that just hasn't gone away from week one is, where is the run game? We're hoping for Dobbins, we're hoping for Gus, but I think at this point, like, I've seen enough that, like, it's really, there's something else missing here. Certainly the left side of the line doesn't help. Now having to go on our second left tackle that's not named Ronnie Stanley, that's certainly not great. But you even had guys like, I saw one or two plays today with Pat Ricard whiffing on some blocks. Like, that just doesn't happen from some of these guys. So execution certainly needs to be better. That's really the one area that I think that the Ravens they need to get better. I think that really hurt them, especially in like time of possession, in some short yardage situations. They just couldn't get anything going. I think if they can fix that up, like, this game looks very different. But unfortunately, we just weren't equipped, I guess, this time to win in like a shootout game. We just fell a little bit short.
Yeah, the timing wasn't very good at the end, just like the way everything kind of flew. But, man, the run game is a huge problem. They're not blocking well, and that's the issue. Like, even with JK or Gus back, if we're not getting holes, they're going to have equal levels of frustration. Like, yeah, they're a little bit shiftier. They may be able to make a little bit more out of something. Like, I don't disagree with that, and I still want them out there, and I'm excited for it. But it's a line problem, man, and it's multiple levels. Like you said, Ricard missed a few blocks. Unfortunately, Homeboy was hurt. He was limited in practice this week, and he came out and played. I guarantee you he's not playing at 100%. You had a lot of walking wounded in this game. Marlon Humphrey was in and out. Peters seemed to be on a little bit of a pitch count, or maybe he was also having some injury problems. It's really kind of frustrating how that's all played out. We had other devastating injuries. Means is probably done for the year. I don't know. I don't think they said it was official yet at the end of the press conference, which, by the way, it was like the most short answer, frustrated 8 minutes I've ever seen literally of the Ravens. Like, they just barely talked about anything and just were clearly upset. And not many people spoke, but yeah, it was a very kind of rough outing. Pepe Williams had some sort of injury that looks not great, and we were down to on the play that Tyreek Hill scored a big touchdown. It was Jalen Armour-Davis and Worley out there as our corners, which is felt like last year all over again. We can't expect these really inexperienced cornerbacks to be able to defend these guys and put them on an island. I think that might have been a failure of Mike McDonald and his play calling at the end there, because I think we'll talk about that later. But yeah, it is kind of frustrating how that played out. But with the run game where it's at, it's a very one-dimensional offense. Now that one dimension is really good, the passing is really good. I even made the joke on Twitter, we should just never run again. Running's over. Lamar every once in a while can go scramble. He can do Lamar's able to keep the ball too, but for now, the running game is canceled. This is so bad. If you take out his 79-yard run, we had 76 yards. But then if you take out Lamar Jackson, we had 40 over too many attempts. It's just bad. 16, 17 attempts, 40 yards over 16 or 17 attempts. That's that kills drives. You can't do that.
Yeah, it's really bad. The second touchdown drive that was kind of overturned, right? You had Mike Davis crashing at the line, getting no gain for 2 plays in a row, and then Lamar also crashing at the line and not getting a touchdown on the 4th down. Come on. These are the easiest, supposedly the easiest, kind of plays to be able to make situations for. And again, we're used to, aside from last year, I guess, we're a little bit spoiled and kind of used to being able to make these no problem. But you just could get nothing.
Yeah, that sequence was terrible, right? Mike Davis I don't even understand why he's on the team. 5 carries for 4 yards. He's been completely ineffective the last 2 games. Whenever he's in, it's quite sad. And the third down play of that sequence that you're talking about, after the 2 stone walls for Mike Davis, I thought it was a fine call because Lamar had spacing. But then they tried to do a QB sneak with Lamar. This is not a good play for Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's killer skill is his vision, ability to read leverage, and get him in space. Do not just have him pull a Joe Flacco. He's not as tall as Joe Flacco. It's just dumb. That was the dumbest play. Even if they didn't fumble it, even if it worked, it's a bad play. It's a bad play. And the only thing that came from that sequence, the only good that came from that sequence, is that they were convinced we were going to do it again. So they bit so hard on that play action that Mark Andrews was wide open the next time we were down there. But that's not a good reason. You should have done that. Honestly, we could have passed in the 1 yard line. One of those 4 plays should have been a pass, in my opinion. Don't call the same play twice in a row with Mike Davis. That's just, it's not Gus Bus. With Gus, fine, you can call it twice. I allow it. But what is this? That was really frustrating. Even at the time of live in game, I was this is not a good strategy after the second run.
So I thought the assignment was for us to exhaust everything that went
good
before we went into the negative.
All right, what
we ran out on the offense.
We dived right in.
Golly, man, I know. Well, I guess Duvernay kind of counts, his touchdown return. We talked about that. That was magical. It was such a beautiful thing. Peter did that series about the best turnovers against Miami, and I was joking, the convoy happened for Duvernay on that play, and
it did, yeah.
Malik Harrison was opening, getting good blocks, key blocks at the end there, so he could get the rest of the distance, and there were key blocks, I think, by Tyler Wallace, and I forget who else. like at the beginning of the kickoff. Like, that was so cool. It was great. And now Duvernay's concussed. Sad. Pain.
Yeah, hopefully he's going to be okay because first 2 games of the season, Duvernay's been a key contributor. Sure, he doesn't have the largest role on this offense, but he's done some things. Obviously, had 2 touchdowns against the Jets, special teams touchdown this week, and that was a key catch he made where unfortunately he did get concussed. So hopefully he'll be okay. Offense, good things.
Well, there's a creativity that we like, that like run play for Mark Andrews.
It was, yes.
The
We were
vault?
joking during the game that the vault had been opened, yeah. And, of course, then the Dolphins would go and steal that play in the second half, do the exact same thing, and it would work for them as well. But, yeah, I think, did they have attempt a sweep with Duvernay? I'm guessing not, because I'm not seeing that in the stat sheet. I thought
They did a they were going to do a sweep with Duvernay. That's what sprung Lamar. That was the option, so to speak.
That was that play? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Lamar,
I mean,
like,
we talked about it all last year. Find some ways to get creative with the rushing offense when you don't have your best guys back there, when the blocking is subpar. And, another positive, though, I think we can look at is a hypothetical. So I don't love it, but you look at where the Ravens were forced to go in this game and to put Davis in those situations. Now, were the Ravens putting Mike Davis in the best situations? Was it just that Davis is just done at this time in his career? I think we all have a hunch of to which of those two is the correct one. But I still think you put Dobbins in that offense, sure, the holes might not be there, and we don't know exactly how healthy he is. I think the Ravens win this game if Dobbins plays, because that's how close it was in these situations. They just needed that extra dimension out of the backfield for the defense to account for. Because when you've got this running attack back there, that is Mike Davis, who's a one-dimensional player who can't even do that dimension correctly right now. Drake, who's serviceable, but they haven't figured out how he works in this offense yet. And Hill has shown a spark, a singular spark, in both of the 2 games this season so far, and that's all they're going to do. That makes it a lot easier for the defense. You've narrowed down what they have to prepare for. So, the Ravens found themselves in multiple short yardage situations. I think just having the threat of Dobbins back there would have been enough. And again, it's a hypothetical, but I think that's how close the Ravens were. And it goes back to what I was talking about in when we were doing the season preview episode. We were looking at the schedules, and I threw out there, are we overestimating or are we not giving enough credence to the possibility that there will be some hiccups in this first 5-6 games of the season, just because the Ravens are bringing so many players back from injury and we don't know when they're coming and to what degree they'll be able to help the team. And I think that this game is just a prime example of that fact. And hopefully, as the season goes along, these guys will become healthier. Unfortunately, the reality of the NFL is you're going to lose some guys. We saw the injury to Pepe Williams today. Hopefully, won't be out for too long. Obviously, lost Juwan James and Kyle Fuller in the previous game. But I think as the season goes along, the team will have a better idea of who's on the team and what role they have. Right now, I think you've got portions of the team that are set, and other portions of the team where the Ravens are just trying to see what patchwork works until guys they're expecting to come back will. And I think there's a chance for some of the little things to get messed up in that situation. And I think that's one of the things that doomed the Ravens today.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, Peter. I'll say on the defense, actually switching gears over to the defensive side, we talked about pieces and sort of not knowing who's back and kind of what their role is. I'll say 2 positive things that I guess I saw on the defensive side. One, Marcus Williams continues to show huge dividends for the Ravens. He had 2 interceptions today, probably could have had a third. An incredible game, another one. And Marcus Peters was able to come back. I think Alec mentioned earlier, he was kind of on a pitch count, played some plays, took some plays off, but overall I thought he did well. He was involved in a couple of tackles. I didn't see any hesitancy, I guess, from him getting involved, at least in the few tackles that I saw. I thought, I think he maybe had one or two plays that I could think of that maybe he let some guy get behind him. I can't remember if it was Waddle or Hill in that play, but
I think it was Tyreek.
He had one of those.
One of those touchdowns, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that one wasn't great. I think in that play he probably thought that maybe he had safety help. But yeah, I mean overall, it was just good to kind of see him out there. I thought overall it was just we're talking about all these people who are injured or getting hurt or just not sure of like kind of what their level of play is. It was just nice to finally get one guy out there that we've been waiting on to be able to have some snaps. But yeah, those are two of the good things among probably a very short list of things on the defense.
There was a lot of great things, man. Like you said, Marcus Williams is a huge steal of the offseason. So glad he's there. It's so unfortunate he didn't get that extra interception that kind of went through his hands because the next play was that deep ball to Tyreek Hill. Like, that doesn't happen. I would have really switched the game. I think we win, right? Like, there were like 4 instances of little things that if they went the opposite way, you win the game. And some of them were just like egregious. Like the Gesicki touchdown, like very athletic catch, very cool. But
was not a touchdown.
You were out of bounds, dude. Like, it was pretty damn clear. And the fact that they said they had a clear angle of him not being out of bounds is fascinating because we had a very clear angle of him being out of bounds. So I don't know how that works. But good job, NFL. Like, maybe you should show us that angle. Show us the tape if you're so damn confident. That's so frustrating. And then also, the rookies were playing decent at one point. We saw some really good plays out of Armour Davis. We saw the hit stick from Kyle Hamilton a couple of times. Pepe Williams was all over the place and had a hit stick. And these were big. They were just like hit sticks for fun. They stopped the momentum right at the sticks, and they didn't get first downs. These were really good plays by them. And they're young, and they're going to have their lumps, just like Armour Davis had a lump, and Hamilton had a lump on the touchdown passes. But seeing a little bit of those early returns, like dynamic plays, makes you think, okay, they have a chance. What else was good? Oh, there was one point where Houston was unblockable. 3 plays in a row, he had pressures. One of them was a sack, and one of them was almost a sack. Like, that was pretty cool. We saw a couple of good plays out of Malik Harrison. Tackles for loss, being in the right place, etc. That was good. There were definitely some solid signs on defense. And, yeah, that was all in the first half, though.
Yeah, and, to go back to the rookies, again, I think that goes back to just some issues you're having right now with injuries. I think in the first half, you looked at what the ideal situation is for this defense, for those guys' roles. Right now, I think that the Ravens did a great job of putting those guys in situations where they can succeed in that first half. And that's the thing with rookies. Like, more often than not, there are exceptions, but more often than not, you have to bring those guys in and put them in situations where, they're ready, where, bringing them in gradually. And when audibles have to happen due to injuries or game plan, they're going to struggle in that situation. So, I don't really know what the plan is going to be going forward, though, for these players, because we're already seeing the injuries pile up. Like we talked about, Fuller's out for the year. Stevens, came into preseason late. He was out today. Pepe Williams, one of the rookies, albeit he's hurt. We don't know where he's going. And it's just like we're doing this all over again, unfortunately, it seems like. But one thing we got to say, though, is, yeah, the safety duo of Marcus Williams and Chuck Clark, they weren't blameless in the second half themselves, although I think that they were less of the problem than the other members of the defense. But if we can keep those guys healthy, like those guys on the back end can really help right the ship, I think, in this situation.
Oh, for sure. I think for me to kind of pivot a little bit from the secondary for a second, but I think what this game kind of told me is that Week 1, when we were seeing such early signs from the defensive line, I think that might have been more of a secondaries playing really well and getting the time for the defensive line to get home, whereas this was, no, they just weren't able to cover for that long. And I think part of that was because Tua was doing such a good job of getting the ball out quickly to his underneath options, especially in the first half. I mean, that's really how they kind of stood in, is Tua wouldn't take as many shots deep, and when he did, then we would take advantage of them. But, I mean, the defensive line, I thought, was just a non-factor this game. I mean, we had 1 sack from Houston. I think we had 1 other quarterback hit from Matabuke. That's it. There's nothing else. We just really couldn't get any pressure on Tua, I think. And, the first half, not so bad. I think the game plan was to, dare Tua to throw it deep. And for the most part, we came out on top. See Marcus Williams 2 interceptions. Should have been 3. So, it seemed to work. But after that, I think they just really, they really struggled in just a lot of phases, right? They struggled in preventing the deep play. They let guys get behind them. It's just unacceptable. You've got to be able to do that. Like even in the first half, like if you're daring Tua to throw you deep, you're not playing cover 0. You're putting a safety back there to be able to cover it if it's there and take advantage of it, right? You're not just letting guys blow by you. So, I mean, I think there was a little bit of that. I think there was just a little bit of just, again, just like missed tackles, a lot of them everywhere. I mean, there are just so many plays of just Tyreek Hill just running by our secondary and just getting a big play. That's really, really frustrating. A lot of things that can be cleaned up, but certainly, I mean, it is a big reason for why, the Dolphins, they scored 28 points in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, I can't remember a Ravens defense ever doing that and being scared at the end of the game that, like, we just cannot score because we're just letting everything up. The closest game that I think that reminds me of it is maybe the Bengals game at home last year.
What this reminds me of is last year when we lost to the Raiders and we were very disappointed. It was a big blunder and we blew the game. And then we went ahead and we beat the Chiefs and we felt like we did a little swap. You're like, oh, we kind of felt like we might be 1-1 after that, but, this is a big bummer. Now we have to steal a game from the Bills. I don't like that. Like that's the kind of parallel if we look at it that way. But man, I just don't know what. I guess I give kudos to the Dolphins for adjusting, because what I think was happening at the beginning was they were doing these short passes, and we were like, "That's fine. They didn't blitz like that heavily. They had a nice amount of people in coverage, and whenever Tua's arm was like not putting enough speed against the ball, that's how we saw these closing speeds. Like they were able to close on the ball, get deflections, get interceptions. So we were like daring them to do that. I think what changed is that they were, instead of doing that, they're like, well, maybe we should see if the pass rush will actually get home instead of just doing quick passes and not letting them because there's just not enough time. And then it wasn't. And we were then getting frustrated and sending more people and not getting the push, which left less people in coverage, which led to big plays, which when you're down to these other less experienced options in the secondary, it's maybe questionable. Maybe you just say, you know what, Tua, we continue to dare you. We'll give you the time. That's fine. But to not get pressure and take bodies away from the secondary was a very bad combination. And we did it a lot at the end of the game. And that, I think, was a big misstep by Mike McDonald.
The Dolphins outcoached the Ravens in the second half. You got to give kudos to them. They went into halftime and they figured out what adjustments needed to be made. Some collection of players and coaches convinced everyone that the game was not out of hand, that they could come back, and they came out and they executed. And unfortunately for the Ravens, they came out, in my opinion, just kind of lifeless. Like the game was already won, particularly on offense. I don't think we really saw the same aggressiveness in play calling in the second half. Outside of Lamar's run, there really wasn't much offense to speak of in the second half for the Ravens. And for as good of a game that the Ravens did play, that Lamar Jackson did play, you could see the offense was just kind of out of sync in the fourth quarter. They weren't able to get a touchdown on that final drive, had to settle for the field goal. Lamar had Mark Andrews open in the end zone, overthrew him. There was the fourth down play on the drive earlier from that we've already talked about. And, I don't really even know if it's really worth picking at Lamar for the fourth quarter, because you're already putting him in a situation where, with everything they'd already done, he shouldn't have had to do more. Right? He really shouldn't have had to do any more than he did for the Ravens to win that game. He needed to, but the rest of the team should have made it so that he wasn't in that situation. But yeah, I mean, hopefully this is just a learning experience for the whole roster, the whole team going forward. But it's in a certain sense, though, you can't fault the team too much, because, like we said, this was the largest lead the Ravens have ever given up in franchise history, tied for it. And after halftime, going into halftime, you kind of got vibes of 2019. Those games, the Ravens would get up big, and then it was over. The second half would come. The other team was spent. They didn't have anything else left to give. It's really how it felt, and it didn't really look like the Dolphins had a path to winning this game. But again, credit the coaches for the Dolphins. They figured it out.
We said one more touchdown and maybe Huntley comes out. Remember we were talking about Huntley maybe coming out?
We were talking about that, yep.
And I think what this game also reminded me of was the opposite experience of what the Colts must have been feeling when we did this to them back last year in that night game.
Good point.
Because we were talking about it, we were like, that ain't going to be enough, right? Like they kicked the field goal and we're like, that doesn't feel like it's going to be enough. We haven't been able to stop them for a while. And similar with the Colts, it was back and forth. And you were like, if the Ravens get the ball again, they're scoring another touchdown. You're not stopping us. And then they didn't take enough time off the clock. And it's like, all right, go do it, Lamar. And he did. And then you were like going into overtime, right? We knew it was going to happen. And similarly, we just felt very uneasy about the defense's ability to close out the game at the end, which is so frustrating after we had a lot of hopes. And I still think this defense could be excellent. Another bummer of an example is if Travis Jones was available, maybe the pass rush is a little bit better. If Means is available, maybe Owe and Houston aren't playing every single down and probably getting gassed. Really bummer that, Owe didn't have a big game. He was pretty silent again. And I think what we learned from this game is that while this defense, I think, has a very high ceiling, we are experiencing enough injuries and have enough inexperience, high-end but inexperienced players, that it could be a little rough for a little bit. And I hope that we're able to coach these inefficiencies out of the team, right? I think with good coaching, we'll be able to make the best of this unit and do really well with what's available and where everyone's at skill-wise and readiness, so to speak. But it was give credit to the Dolphins. I think that's the biggest thing to say. They were able to overcome some of the shortcomings that maybe Tua provides as far as arm strength and zip on the ball. And they were also able to just have incredible yak. We talked about that. We said the biggest thing we need to do is stop these yak monsters. And some of our tackling was a little off, and also they're just good. They just take angles or they get behind you, and it's game over. I mean, just we outran them. I mean, this game was a game of people outrunning other people. It was not a game of many sustained drives. There were so many dynamic plays, right? Yeah. I mean, just there was a lot of that. So. Big bummer, yeah, that pass, he had Mark Andrews open. I think if the pass was on the money, he would have scored a touchdown there, and it would have been great. Similarly, that pass to Likely, but I think there was a penalty or something when it came back. But yeah, it's just tough, man. It's just really tough the way that went down, and the fumble and that sneak play, not great. The other fourth down, remember the fourth down? The guy next to us didn't realize it was fourth down. He's like, "Oh, go for it!" And it's that's what we just did. It did not work. Yeah, so they just need to execute in those high leverage situations better. And honestly, they can't let themselves get in that situation again, man. You can't be up 21 points. So this is fun fact. Here's what happened, and I need to go do this anyways. So after the game, I went back and I went to the church to help prep for the festival this weekend, which everyone should come to that's listening to the show. And we'll talk about it more. And I get there, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, I went to the game. Like, that was a great one, wasn't it?" Because they got there at 4. They left a little early. And I was like, "No, we lost." And they're like, "How?" We were up by 3 touchdowns, and there was like, not that much time to go. And I was like, "Exactly, it was terrible." Like, these people assumed the Ravens had won.
Yeah.
Because they were like, "Oh, I got to go to the church." Like, they wanted to get started, or whatever. And they thought the Ravens had won. And I had to be the one to tell them that they did not win. But yeah, Greek Festival, 2504 Cup Hill Road, Friday, 5 to 9 or something like that. Saturday from noon to like 9, lunch and dinner. And then Sunday from noon to like 6 or so, I think. You can find all the information online. St. Demetrius Greek Festival, Parkville, Maryland. Please do come. Slovakia will be very good. I'm the one preparing it. That's a shameless plug.
Oh gosh, how do I follow that? Well, okay. You mentioned one thing earlier just about the Ravens kind of like coaching out some things on defense and having growing pains, right? The only thing I kind of want to add there is like, look, I feel like you kind of have to put some of this on Mike Macdonald too. He might, have to take this and, say like, hey, what did I do wrong, right? Was it play calling? Was it, not, what was it situational? Just not calling plays in the right thing or not sort of treating things in the right way? Because this was a pretty epic collapse. I mean, and I'm not saying that to say like this defense is going to suck. Like there are a lot of variables at play that could make this defense better, right? But that being said, this was a really epic collapse, right? In my opinion, like I think the offense needs to figure out the run game. However, I think that Greg Roman has a long track record of having good rushing attacks. So I think that stuff is going to get figured out. Even last year, where we had Tyson season, where at least we thought we did for the first 2 games, and then there was a really rocky middle part where Tyson lost his job, and we had no idea who was going to run the ball after that, right? We still figured it out for the most part, right? So I'm not like long term, I'm not really worried about that. What I am worried about is going to having another defense which is known for giving up big plays. That was something that plagued us a lot last season. And while, we've seen some good things here and there, it really needs to be cleaned up to the fact of like, we can't have this be like the 2022 Ravens defense. And I understand that there are people injured. There are guys that we want to have back. I think there are plenty of guys, like Ojabo and Bowser, Travis Jones. Some of these guys who would come back, and I think Mike Macdonald will love to have, especially at edge, because we just don't have enough people there. But that being said, like, now is now. We have the people who we have, right? And Mike Macdonald needs to have the defense prepared with the people that we have, right? And so, yeah, if we are facing any other teams like this, like the Bills in 2 weeks, the Bengals in 3 weeks, we got to get this shit figured out. Just full stop.
Yeah, and I think we'll have a better idea of this when we have some time to rewatch the film and prepare, and when we come here for the episode later in the week, preparing for Patriots game. But like looking at what the Ravens can do going forward, was this just a bad game, or I think we've said it. There's some things that the Ravens need to fix, and what aspects should they do to address that? And we'll see. New England hasn't had a terribly strong start to the season. Their defense does scare me. I think their defense is good, but their offense. We said the same thing about the Dolphins. I know, but I don't think that even the Dolphins. We acknowledge that they had explosive skill players that can get you on defense if you're not fundamentally sound. The Patriots, I don't think they really have that. So this is a good spot, albeit against a very strongly coached football team, to get right, for the Ravens to look at what are these things that they need to do to prepare themselves for the gauntlet of the schedule that's coming up. against the relatively weaker opponent compared to the rest they'll be playing coming up. And, I think it'll start with, like what you're saying, Chris. They do need to find a balance on offense between the pass and the rush. I think it's fine if they're passing more than they're rushing. A lot of teams in the NFL do that. We're just not accustomed to that with the Ravens. But we saw last year how much trouble the Ravens had without a consistent rushing attack. You still need that, and that's going to be key for them. And then on defense, just I think figuring out contingency plans for these injuries if they pop up. How do you make those adjustments, like we were saying earlier? How do you make sure that you give Armour Davis, you give Westry, if Williams is out, the assistance they need? And I think those are the two things that we look at from this game that we're just like, we wish that the Ravens had done a little better and could have had the biggest impact as far as in-game adjustments are concerned for this particular contest.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm the Ravens, two of the big things I think I'm looking at least on the defensive side, that I'd like to see kind of cleaned up for next week. The first one for me, I thought the Dolphins had a lot of success on the ground, more than I guess I would have expected. I really think that they were, at least the Ravens were not doing very well at keeping plays in front of them. They were letting guys hit the hole and then get around them really quickly, hitting the second level really quickly. That stuff, for sure, I think needs to be cleaned up. Yeah, I'm really curious. I look at more of the film to try and figure out if it was more of a technique thing or, personnel thing. I'm not really sure right now what that was, but I mean, that was something that was worried me a little bit. I mean, obviously, the Dolphins ended up throwing for 6 touchdowns, so, the pass was much more dangerous than the run, but that being said, New England comes in with a pretty good rushing attack, so it'd be good to kind of clean that up for that game. The other thing is, just figuring out more of the secondary, who's going to be the pieces and what situations they have to be more successful. I think first 2 weeks, Marcus Williams, whatever he's doing, keep doing it. Seems to be working really, really well. I mean, other guys have been okay in spots. Marlon, I think quietly has been being okay, but it's one of those where I would like to kind of see him to be put in better situations for him to make some plays. A big pass deflection, interceptions or something. He's been close to 1 or 2. I think he was kind of close on 1 this game, which ended up going to Marcus Williams. But still, it seems like he's been a little quiet for me. So, I'm not sure, where best to kind of put him. But yeah, I mean, trying to figure out, we have a lot of talented pieces. We're just, getting them in poor plays and miscommunications, whatever you want to call it. They're just, missing on some of the plays that they really need to clean up. So part of it's execution. I think part of it's just, what you said earlier, Peter, just there are a lot of moving pieces, and the coaching staff, being young, Mike McDonald being young, really need to figure out who are the guys that you can rely on and where best to kind of play them. So fortunately, yeah, lots of things that can be cleaned up. It's not like we're throwing out trash in terms of players, players or coaches. We know that these guys can play. But
another big digression from last week. The other big digression was Patrick Queen. He had a really good game last week. We're singing praises. He seemed a little bit more competent in coverage, and then it was like old Patrick Queen this game for some reason. And if I recall correctly, we also were singing him praises in against the Raiders in the next game, and after that we were not happy with him. So golly, man, I hope that this doesn't happen again. I hope it was just a blip. But that's another kind of fun one. I hope that he's able to clean it up and perform at the level we all hope and expect and think that he can play at.
Yeah, I'd like to look at the tape. I mean, it was one of those things I didn't feel like he was the weak spot per se. It wasn't like he was going to get picked on every single time. We certainly had way more problems with the wide receivers, which Queen is not going to be on at all. But to me, it was just kind of my raw take here. It's just, I didn't really see anything super impressive. I didn't really see anything that egregious. Just kind of replacement level, I guess.
Anything else to talk about, or you want to do our moral victory awards?
I had one comment I wanted to make that I think will kind of fit into the show here at the end. there was also a point in this game after the MVP chance, everyone was like, pay Lamar. I was joking with EDC Burner. He should shop a picture of EDC holding like a $1 billion bill, like standing at his his locker, being like, "You want to take it?" But I think like going off of that, if Lamar continues to have a season like he just did this game, like we all agree, Lamar Jackson had a very good game, right? If he continues to do that, I think the Ravens were in an impossible negotiation. Like, sure, maybe the Ravens were like Lamar was negotiating with them. But he was basically wondering, how high can I get the number? And then you're surely going to give me that and more if I have another great season. So his bet was, I think I'm going to have a great season. They're going to come with that and more. So, like, even if the Ravens went crazy with an offer, Lamar could have like been like, if they're willing to offer that right now, surely they'll offer it later. And it might be more after I like play really well. So part of me was wondering if like, even though Lamar was apparently like this had like those good negotiations on both sides, if like in the back of Lamar's head he was like, I just want to see how far I can take him, and then maybe next year I'll actually be willing to talk, and but you could see like he could do that again next year. It just becomes a matter of how long he wants to be on the franchise tag and stuff. So I guess like what I'm getting at is you want to go and pay the man after he's having good successes. Like that was always the problem. If you assume that he was going to have a good season, which we all were assuming was probably going to be the case, they're going to offer whatever they offer them last and more. So why would he take the old offer? And why would he take the offer that they're currently offering him? Like, would you take the offer, King Negotiator? Like, if you were in the other shoes, like, I don't know, man. I feel like he has us by the balls. Just admit it. And like, he's doing what he should do.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, if I were in Lamar's shoes, like, yes, I mean, yeah, if your goal is to maximize your profits, like, yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I've tried to tend to stay out of most of the contract talk, and then Twitter when it comes to the contract talk, because I see way too many Photoshop pictures of Lamar on other teams and just people saying like whatever they want to say about the situation. It's just crazy. But yeah, I mean, shoot, man. Yeah, if he continues to play like this, I mean, the number's going to go up, but like, okay, pay him. Like, I mean, like,
but it's a matter of him saying yes to it. Like,
yeah,
if he's like, oh, I can keep playing this game, like, and he kind of can.
I mean, whatever Lamar wants to do, as long as he wants to be a Raven, like, whatever. Like if he's like solely like interested in seeing like how big can the number go, like what is the maximum amount of dollars that I can get from the Ravens? Like, okay, but like just please don't leave. Like, I mean, if you continue to play really, really, really well, like I want you on my team. There's plenty of fans out there just like I don't get it. There are two extremes here. Like you either pay a quarterback top dollar and you have a really good team, or you pay a quarterback top dollar and then you can't afford to pay other people and your team gets really shitty. Like there's that, but then there's also like, like, oh, I don't want to like pay top dollar to a quarterback because you automatically assume that your team's going to be shitty. And like, no, you can like pay nothing for a quarterback or pay like a little bit less for a quarterback that's middling, and then you have a middling team. Like, like I don't know. It just seems like obvious to me. Like if you have a quarterback who's continuing to play really, really well and to keep getting better really, really well, just pay him. You're not gonna like save any money by paying like Kirk Cousins $5 million less or whoever that you want to pay that's going to be middling like next year as a quarterback. Like just pay Lamar. Yeah, I just want him to play for the Ravens.
You either pay Lamar or you are willing to go and try to reset the clock like you did with Lamar and get another like star rookie. But that's extremely difficult to do. And if you don't hit it, you put your franchise in a very difficult spot because you want to give him more than 1 year, but then you're wasting time, and then all the other talent cycles out. So like, it's an extremely risky proposition to do anything but pay the quarterback. And at the end of the day, though, they can't just try to pay him. He has to say yes. And if he understands that he has a lot of leverage, he might not say yes right away. And that's okay. But that's all. I kind of like wanted to put that little piece of info out there regarding the contract situation. I feel like the exact argument of like, you should have just paid him is exactly why Lamar did not get paid. He knows that. That's why he didn't do it. So, anyhow, I think we should do some moral victories. Yeah?
Yeah, I can do that. Those of you who have been listening to our show for the couple years we've done this, for those of you who are new this season, to kind of lighten the tone after a difficult loss, we'll hand out moral victory awards instead of MVP. Make them a little humorous if possible. But, I guess I got to give mine. I'll start off with, this guy was perfect today. Probably the only player we could say was perfect. Some players were close to perfect. Justin Tucker just went out, and he got a 51-yard field goal, 5 for 5 on extra points. Good job, Tucker. He gets mine this week.
I'll give a moral victory award to Chris's empanadas. I thought the tailgate was pretty solid, and those empanadas really kicked, and the chimichurri was like excellent. So well done, Chris. You gave us the energy, the calories needed, so we could make a bunch of noise and attempt to lift up our defense during those trying times.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Worked really hard for that moral victory award. I guess that would have been the MVP if we would have won, too. Man. All right. I was trying to think of somebody who wouldn't be like super obvious, but then I kind of struggled with that, so I'm just going to give mine to Devin Duvernay. Yeah, dude. I mean, that the kickoff return for touchdown in the beginning was awesome. You don't get to see those very often. He continuing to just be a great third option, I think, for Lamar. I think this game they tried to get likely more involved, and he had a little bit more success than he did week one, which is good. But I still think Duvernay right now is kind of like the third option, and he's, I hope he's able to recover soon. Concussions can be nasty, so we'll see what happens. But he had a great game.
Awesome one, Chris. Well, that was really challenging, guys, and we appreciate it if you listened this far, kind of sorting through our emotions and thoughts on the game. We look forward to dissecting the Patriots game and hopefully getting a bounce-back win against a team that I guess is quote-unquote well-coached. I'm starting to question how well-coached they are this year, but we'll get into that next episode. You can find us online at Twitter at OneWinningPod. You can also follow us on YouTube, OneWinningPod. Great stuff going out on YouTube. And you can also email us on winningpod@gmail.com. We appreciate you guys. Let's rebound from this. Let's get a win. And let's have a good week, man. It's so hard sometimes to have these losses and then kind of just feel negative. Like, let's just try to have a good week. Let's have some positivity. Hopefully we can raise each other up and get that victory next week. Go Ravens.